Hello, welcome everyone. And thank you for being here on Reboot, Reflect, Revive, where I share thought-provoking interviews with inspiring individuals who are change makers and experts in their field. They share fresh perspectives to create a better understanding of ourselves and our future. Today, I would like to welcome back Cecilia Lui, all the way from Canada. She's a consultant, coach, trainer, and educator, and Cecilia is a strong advocate of personal development. So thank you, Cecilia, and welcome back. So continuing our conversation on imposter syndrome, today we will focus on Superwoman Syndrome. This term was coined in 1984, where Superwoman Syndrome occurs when women neglect themselves because they're seeking to do it all and stretching themselves too thin. In the Superwoman Syndrome, a woman feels that she carries the feeling of I'm not good enough as I am. It is a high achieving woman pushing herself to prove her ability to do so much, and even sometimes that's not enough. Superwomen tend to measure their self-worth entirely in what they can do and accomplish. Their self-valuing and self-esteem is wrapped up in what they can or cannot achieve. So Cecilia, this is a very powerful topic and there's so much we can share about it, but tell me a little bit about your experience, your knowledge, and what you feel is happening now.
It is a big topic, and I can share my experience and my observation. Now, I definitely have been there, being raised by a strong woman. So I would say my first half of the life, I felt like I needed to do more. Mm-hmm. And that sometimes has something to do with your partner, how much they lend a hand or how much, they're there for you to support you. And I think culturally, many men in past generations, they work away from home. So I've observed that many older generations of women, they hold up the entire family. So, and oftentimes, they're the model to their children, doing it all. And in past generations, families are big, 10, 15 children. And, from people that I, read about or watch interviews on, they tend to reference that, their mom, and these are men talking, their mom was held up the entire family. So that, reminded me that in past generations, men worked away from home, whether it's as a sailor or just, went to a different country to pursue a better lives, to support family. So I think traditionally the Superwoman came from there, at least within my culture. And so the Superwoman, when about to raise children, that felt like they also need to be
Superwoman
or Superman, right? And for sure, I was raised, me and my siblings were raised by a mom that worked full-time, and try and do a lot.
Yeah.
Now, many families they didn't have the men there. And sometimes women who do too much, you've probably heard about that, they wanted things done a certain way. And when the men try and support, there's a little bit of criticism that came in. You should do it this way, or you didn't do enough. And over time, we created our own monster,
Yeah.
whether laziness set in or, I often try and get into the heads of men or children, doesn't matter what I do, I'll be criticized and it's not good enough. So why bother? So I'm gonna sit there and do something else. And then over time, that has a negative impact,
That's
right?
true. Mm.
And I saw that I got married early, divorced early. And I think the Superwoman had a little bit has something to do with that. And as I reflected back then, I realized how damaging that was.
Mhm.
And I wasn't going to raise my child the same way I did it with my partner. So I raised my child independently. But going back to Superwoman, so understanding my part in how I created some of the things that didn't work.
Mhm.
And also the second half of my life being a Superwoman was circumstantial, obviously being a single
Mhm.
mom. So
Yeah.
I there were a lot of things that I had to do because there was only one of me. So I
Mhm.
think recognizing that, it was much easier for me later on to kind of step back. And I don't strive to do things perfectly. I think later on, as I reflected, the change was I pursue excellence. And as long as I did my best, that would be good enough. And I think you also hear a lot of times people encourage women to pursue the good enough rather than it has perfect, because I don't know, personally, I don't think perfectionism exists. It exists in our head, but there's no measurement, there's no benchmark. How do you measure perfectionism? You can't, because
You
it's our
can't.
own.
It's in our heads.
r-
It's also an arbitrary standards that we create, and like Superwomen create, that they have to aspire to that level of perfection in their minds, and if they don't, then it becomes like as if a huge failure, and it's hard for them to deal with any kind of mistake or failure, especially I would imagine is that they want to be in control all the time of situations. And obviously, external situations cannot be controlled. I mean, if things have to go wrong, they will go wrong. It's the attitude that the Superwoman has to take a step back and say, you know what, I'm okay with this, doing this much, and letting go of the rest. Is that what you feel that works?
Well, health is important to me. So I often gauge how things are out. And if I feel that I've overstretched myself, or my mental health isn't in the right place, then that's a sign, I need to step back. I'm not, ever since I was a single mom, I made it really clear that I wasn't going to go all the way to the top, because my child back then was my top priority. So I think as women, you have to make that conscious decision. Where do you want to put your priority? Um, a lot of talk about, can you have it all? I think you can have it all, but just not all at the same time. I
Mm-hmm.
think we have to be very realistic, right? And I I think every person needs to identify where their priorities are and rank those priorities. If you say that, family is important to you, then walk the talk. Don't just say it and then don't show up for it. I
Yeah.
think that's very important. And if you have 3, 4 things that are important to you, then learn to juggle and learn to differentiate. Because I think, you know, as a single mom, full-time working single mom,
Mhm.
if you get a call, my daughter was in daycare. So at any moment, the daycare can call and say, your child is sick, come and get them.
Ah. Mm.
Then you're faced with this decision. Okay, if I step away, if I ask for time off, is anybody going to die? Is somebody going to get fired? Those are the constant decisions that you need to train yourself,
Mm.
you know, to make on a daily basis, right? But
Mm.
then once you identify, or once I identify my daughter is at the top, there's no
Mhm.
compromise, then
Yeah.
it's easy. It makes your decision making very, very easy.
Yeah.
Um, and I think coming back to the Superwoman, there's something also depends, comes back to the dynamics
Mhm.
between us and our parents, how much expectations they placed on us when we
Mm.
were growing. I see, I sat within my family with some siblings and also observe how other women, usually there's an expectation in their upbringing with a parent, you
Yes.
know, wanting them to be certain things, wanting them to be, you know, you have to do this, you have to do that, and it has to be perfect. A
Mm.
lot of times when I listen to people, those things come back into the surface. Um, I have a very strong character in the sense that, you know, it's important that you honor yourself.
Yes.
The people pleasing persona doesn't work in my case.
Mm.
Um, you know, not that I fight about everything, but it's just that I think it's important that you honor who you are,
Mm.
figure out who you are, and then honor those things that were gifted to you. um, we don't live for other people. We have to live for ourselves first, and then be considerate of everything that you are committed to. You know, if you made the choice of becoming a parent, then live up to those commitments. At the end of the day, your family and your children, they're going to be with you till the end, not
Yes.
your job, not your employer. So
Yes.
and I think it also had something to do with, if you've experienced redundancy or being laid off,
Mm.
and I sure have, you know, a couple of times, then those kind of circumstances in life kind of helps you realign the way you see things.
Yes. Yes.
um,
True. Actually, what you share, you have transitioned from being this perfectionist, super mom, maybe superwoman, to being realizing it and taking a step back and understanding yourself. How does your daughter see you in that role?
um, you know what, you brought up a good point. And I, you know, you have adult children as well,
Yes, yes,
and
yeah,
you know, I think parents everywhere, regardless of their age, they do the best that they
they can.
can to
Mhm.
raise their children with what knowledge that they have.
Correct.
And as I grow, as I move through life, of course, as I reflect, there were certain things that if I have another opportunity, I would do it differently. And when I come to those realizations, I try my best to share it with my daughter. And actually, you know what, there's something that you know, as we're on the topic of Superwoman,
Yeah.
I think as I was raising her, um, you know, as the only person that was there doing a lot. Now, doing a lot, I wasn't trying to be all over the place, but I just enjoy the work that I did,
Yeah.
and I was very focused. And I think sometimes, and I'm not sure until I confirm it with her, that if you have a parent that seem to be able to do a lot and do them well, I think that in itself is a little bit, gives a little bit of pressure on the
Yeah.
child. And
Mm-hmm.
I actually see that surfacing in her.
Mm.
You know, there's a conversation that I need to have her,
Yeah.
very soon, because, if I don't point it out, it's just, it'll usually get worse,
Mm-hmm.
because people tend to have a blind spot. And unless you're very self-aware, you develop that self-awareness in yourself, then you're going to continue to walk down that path, and it'll only exacerbate as things goes on, right?
Yeah.
So I don't want her to feel that she's not good enough, because there's no need to compare yourself with a parent or a
Mm-hmm.
sibling. I grew up with a lot of comparison. We have 5 kids in the family, and explicitly we were compared. And I vowed that I would not do that
Mm-hmm.
with other people, especially my child. I
Especially.
hated that. I hated that. And I would not pass that feeling on to my own kid.
Mm-hmm.
But if if the individual has that inner comparison,
Mm-hmm.
then I think as a parent, I need to reassure her that, there's no need for that.
Yes.
Because, as a parent, I would never look down on you.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I definitely would not compare you with me. But I think as a parent, the hardest thing is you see that your child can do a lot more, but then you don't know how the person is feeling inside. So I think the solution is in the dialogue. And
Yes.
yesterday I watched your interview with Peter Nixon, who's,
Mm-hmm.
Peter and I went way back, and I've stolen his saying, the solution will always be in the dialogue. As long as you keep that your communication open, you'll
Yeah.
always find a solution. So I
That's
believe that in the realms of relationship as well.
and sharing your experience, your journey with your daughter, which I do as well. When I share with my daughter that, oh, I made a mistake here, but it's okay. I learned from it, and I'm moving on from there. I'm doing this other thing because I feel that I can develop myself. So it's kind of allowing myself to share that I'm okay with not being perfect, not being good enough, but they live in a hyper competitive world. There's constant sort of access to technology, and therefore digitally we are connected. Everyone knows what's happening on the other side of the world instantly, and therefore there is a chance for vulnerabilities in the sense of comparisons and trying to compete with others to be as successful or even better, or to feel that, oh no, I'm not doing as good as somebody else. It still ties in very much with the Superwoman syndrome, who will continue to commit. There's sort of this loop of suffering that keeps going on, and that overcommitment tendency that happens, that you can't take yourself out of it. Once you commit to something, whether it's a career or family or doing it all, it's very hard to step away from this sort of role that you've put yourself into, isn't it?
It comes back to the esteem thing. So you ask yourself, and I think if we want to change that situation, we need to come back and ask ourselves, okay, so what's important to me? The self-validation is probably the one thing that you want, rather than external validation. And you brought up, your the era of social media, looking at other people, you only see the perfect side of someone's lives on social media.
Yeah.
They don't, yes, there are some people who air their sorrow, who air their, being authentic, but that's a very small fraction.
Mm.
So, understanding that I'm good enough, this pie that I made, it doesn't taste that great, but there's the next opportunity for you to improve things. So I think that continuous improvement. Okay. If you're not happy with what's in front of you, then do better next time.
Yeah.
Right. Rather than being so hard on yourself. And your point being, sharing um, the mistakes and the experience that we've learned with our kids,
Yeah.
that in itself, we're being vulnerable, we're being authentic, and we can only model and influence other people. We can't expect them to turn around quickly. And so I think, the decision to come back to Canada is that we can only influence the people that are important in our lives by modeling our behavior. And I think,
Yes.
I if I could turn back time, I would probably come back a lot sooner. But it is what it is, and I can't change that. And so, this day forward, I'll be here as much as I can, and hopefully, um, be a better influence
Yeah.
to,
But do you feel that in the Superwoman Syndrome, there's a difference in Asian culture and in Western culture? Do you think there's any, in the corporate space, I'm talking about, in the corporate career women, how they project themselves, whether in Asia or in the Western parts of the world?
the cultural question. I think in the Western culture, women are more apt to ask for help, to build their network. There's more and more of that I see, especially in the entrepreneurial world, is building your connection, building your network, and then sharing resources. But in the Chinese culture, traditionally asking for help is perceived as being weak.
Okay.
So again, we can change that in our heads. And that's why I've seen some management that delegation is hard for them because, they can't do it at this level that I can do it. And so I might as well do it myself.
Yeah.
Or it takes too much time to train somebody, to show somebody. And so I might as well do it myself. So that I might as well do it myself pile eventually stack up.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
So whether you're a mom or spouse or whatever, you have to learn to let go and learn to distribute evenly within your household, within your team, so that there's collaboration in there rather than overloading one person, whether you're a manager or you're a mom or you're a spouse, right? Because you want that collaboration within your unit.
In the workplace, would you say that the Superwoman Syndrome exists because there's this constant, not overt but covert competition with men, trying to prove that they're also capable or have the capacity to do the work as good as men? And I know I'm touching on, this is quite a touchy topic, but it is there in the work, in the corporate world, in the culture.
I don't doubt. Fortunately, I've never had to feel like I have to compete against the men. I do the best I can. I show up, with my strengths and how can I add value. And oftentimes I actually get very good vibes from the men that I work with, the respect that I need. I think the competition, sometimes you create that divide for yourself. I compete within myself. I don't compete against other people because, healthy competition, yes. But if it's to the point where, and this can be common, I don't want to show somebody how to do something for fear that they're going to take that away from me or I'm going to lose my job. Unfortunately, that's not a very right mindset, because you do want to empower your team to do what they ought to do, or you want to train up a team that You don't feel like if you're sick one day, you feel like, this everything is falling.
You pointed out perfectionism. Superwoman syndrome actually points towards women trying to be perfect constantly, trying to achieve certain standards way beyond their abilities, and overachievers tend to be always trying to be there for everybody and find it difficult to say no. So I guess it's perfectionism. There's this difficulty to say no, and obviously don't want to show weaknesses, so not asking for help, constantly trying to prove that they're good enough, and then still feeling they need external validation. Tell me, am I missing something out?
No, that's all. Superwoman has everything has a degree, right?
Yeah.
I mentioned earlier, even what we talked about, introversion and extroversion, has a degree on the spectrum. So I think the one question to ask yourself is this doing me any good? Mentally, physically, and the relationships in your life? Are you driving people away with your Superwoman syndrome?
Right.
Those are all good signs. Those are all signs that, you can check in and ask yourself, yes, I'm doing a lot, but is it contributing to my well-being and the well-being of those that I care about? And I think it takes time for us to feel comfortable in our own skin.
Yes.
And it comes back to the esteem. How confident am I? How about myself, rather than, and midlife hit me 20 years ago because I realized that there is a gap between who I was at work and who I was at home. So I made a point to, to kind of peel away the onion and find out what causes the gap. Right? I think in the ideal world, you want to be the same person everywhere you go.
Yeah, exactly.
And so coming back to that point, can I let this part of me be revealed with somebody else? And that comes back to that vulnerability thing. Can I comfortably share with other people, I don't know how to do this, or can you help me with this? I think admitting to the things that you don't know how to do, it's a small step.
It is
And
a
then,
step forward.
yeah,
Asking for help, even in a small thing, just break that loop of being overcommitted to everything or in control of everything. Start small steps. Ask for help, even if you don't need to, but just ask for help. It'll just help you relax internally, and also monitor your own feelings. Like you share that if you're feeling irritable, if you're feeling impatient, if you're feeling anxious, anxiety, and you feel stretched, it's important to know that this is the moment to take a step back and to understand what's going on internally, and then work from there.
Yeah, learning to tune into your own thoughts and emotions and what your body is sending you in terms of signals. A lot of times our body picks up the stress that we're feeling. So learn to tune into your whole physicality and ask yourself, okay, I'm feeling off today. So where am I feeling that offness? And then tune into it. The mind, body, and spiritual connection is important for us all to learn how to do it. And I think asking for help, it's something that was also very difficult for me. That's only kicked in within the last decade, right? So everybody has to start somewhere, but it starts with the awareness. Like, I need to ask for help, or else I'm going to break down, or else I'm going to, be honest. I think we talked about last week, be honest with yourself, be honest with where you are with your capabilities. And is it something that you can further train yourself, further educate yourself, further develop on yourself? And if it's not, then ask yourself the honest question: do I have what it takes to take something senior? And if you don't want the stress, you don't want the people management, then be honest with yourself.
Yeah.
Don't go for the money and the title, but not step out. I think that's
yes, be a friend to yourself, be kind to yourself. When you're feeling that you have to do so much, just stop for a moment and acknowledge that you're doing so much already. Acknowledge that that you are accomplished, or you are doing enough already, and allow yourself that space to relax, to do something you love to do, because everything seems to be done for the future. So the present moment, you're not enjoying the moment. So in many ways, we learn, we understand, and I'm so glad that we're sharing this today, Cecilia, because there is a journey that you've experienced, and so have I. So it's necessary to share this with other women, so that they recognize if they're going through some sort of form of imposter syndrome or superwoman syndrome. So thank you, Cecilia. Any final thoughts you'd like to share?
To the young women out there, and I call anybody even a year younger than myself young, life is a journey. If you get there overnight, then it makes life very boring. So enjoy the journey, because there is something to be learned from every experience. The most important relationship that we have in this life is with ourselves. So find the time, take the time to build that connection with yourself, get to know yourself, so that you know what you stand for, you know where your values lies, and then identify what's important to you, and then step up and commit to those things that you say that are important, whether it's a person or a cause. I think walking the talk, it's important. So, to gain influence, to gain respect. So are you there with yourselves? And at the end of the day, ask yourself, are you happy? Are you content? Like, don't pursue the material things, but become the person that you want, you can be proud of.
Yes, exactly. Wise thoughts, actually very relevant in these times. There's a lot of time to reflect and to relate back to ourselves. So thank you, Cecilia. It was wonderful talking to you about this very important topic, and we shall reconnect again.